rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending. Three more games for BYU football, and then we begin to really look at how the Cougars fit into the Big 12.
Nah, let's do it now.
We will a little bit. Who is playing their final game at Lavelle Edwards Stadium when BYU hosts Utah Tech a week from tomorrow? And equally as important, which players are not? Meaning, which ones are coming back for BYU's first year in the Big 12? Yesterday we thought, let's make a list. Let's talk about the guys that are leaving and the guys that we think are coming back. And
guys we think are leaving.
The guys that we think are leaving,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
It's based largely on our conversation with Cam Miller yesterday as we discussed NFL draft stock, led by Jaron Hall and Puka Nacua and Blake Freeland, all on the offense. We think those guys are for sure gone.
And Clark Barrington, most likely. We'll see.
Isaac Rex, who knows? Peyton Wilgar is a guy that is leaving because he has to. He's graduating.
No, he's a junior.
Oh, that's right.
He can come back.
COVID year.
It's hard to know, right?
Who in the world's going to come back for BYU? But
it's hard to know.
To play it on the safe side, let's just assume all of those guys are gone, which leaves BYU with some huge voids to fill. Big shoes. So with that in mind, or the guys we think are leaving for the NFL next year, Jarom, who are the top 10 players that are coming back next year for BYU as they take on the Big 12?
Well, I want to bring up a couple other names. So we know that like Chris Brooks and Lopini Couture are gone.
Yes.
Because they don't have eligibility.
Yes.
Okay, there's a couple of guys like that. We're not sure due to injuries on a couple of guys like Gunnar Romney. He could redshirt this year and come back. Or do what Baylor did, which is, hey, I'm just done. I'm going to get a job.
Altogether.
Yeah, could be. Chaz Ayu could use a redshirt this year. He hasn't redshirted before. I think he's medical redshirted, but he has another year. And then Peyton Wilgar is listed as a junior. So if he wants to come back, he could. Let's just get that guy a parking pass, huh? Okay, and then juniors that are probably NFL bound, you mentioned, Jaron Hall, Clark Barrington, and Blake Freeland, and Puka Nacua.
Yep.
These guys have been here, I think, 4 or 5 years each. And, yeah, if they want to bounce, they certainly can. They're on NFL radars. If they want to come back and better their stock, they certainly could. Jaron Hall is not a guy that can better his stock that much, we think. So, yeah, we'll see. Okay, so we made a list. Top 10 guys that we think are coming back. We're not sure on Peyton Wilgar. If he comes back, he's definitely on this list. We didn't put him on this list. But here's who we have in alphabetical order,
and
okay?
This is no specific order.
Well, the order is alphabetical.
Okay,
That's
sorry, but from 1 to 10. Like,
yeah.
Don't get confused like, it's 10 through 1.
Cody Epps, Keanu Hill, Harris LaChance, Malik Moore, Connor Pay, who's crazy high grade on PFF.
Number 1.
Keenan Peely, Isaac Rex, Chase Roberts, Kingsley Suamatia, Max Tooley.
Okay.
Now, guys, just off. Again, if Peyton Wilgar returns, if Gunnar Romney returns, if Chaz Ayu returns, those are guys that you'd probably slot into the top 10. You know what I mean?
Chaz has not been healthy long enough. I don't know that I would.
Okay, no Chaz then. He's got to play more to work his way in. But the other two, yes. Okay, other guys that were just left off. Ryan Rico, Campbell Barrington, Ben Bywater probably, it's a snub there. Michael Harper has played well this year.
Michael Harper's got a case. The way he's played in the latter part of the season, he's been really strong, playing really physical football. So he's a guy that could get in that list.
Yeah, and guys that are talented, we just need to see more. We jokingly call them the one-game guys, is Hinckley Ropati.
Yep.
Right? Nice performance. One game.
State.
Miles Davis against Wyoming. Chase Roberts against Baylor. Chase is a high school All-American. We expect him to be a top 10 player next year.
Which is why he's in the list.
Braden Cosper has done, he's like a tremendous role player right now on this team. Jackson McChesney is a guy that has shown us some real flashes. But we've had one game from several of those guys where it was like, whoa. Just want to see a little more there to kind of crack in that top 10. But the point is, BYU's got some nice pieces coming back next year.
Yes.
Even if these big four go to the NFL. And maybe there's other guys that want to bounce. Maybe Harris LaChance has his degree, and now he's married and has a kid, and he's like, nah, I'm out. Like, who knows? But Kingsley Suamatia, just pencil him in right now at left tackle for next year. He just switches over to left tackle. That's spot secure. Now you get the Braden Kimes and the Campbell Barringtons and those guys coming into the mix, that depth that BYU has on the O-line.
What I don't see in this list of 10, and even the guys that are just on the cusp of getting into the top 10 players returning for BYU next year, is any quarterback, and any running back.
Yep.
So clearly, BYU,
Yeah.
what they need the most this offseason, whether it be transfer portal or just high school signees, they need to bolster their depth. From bring in the JUCO ranks, BYU needs probably multiple quarterbacks to join that room, to join the likes of Jacob Conover and Cade
Finnegan.
Soljay Maiava-Peters and Cade Finnegan.
Is Maiava-Peters competing for the starting spot? I'm not quite sure.
Just saying they need guys to join
in that room.
They need guys in that room.
Sure.
And the running backs, yeah, we've seen a little bit from Miles Davis, and we've seen a little bit from Jackson McChesney. But who's
and
the guy?
Hinckley as a screen catcher?
Who's the guy that's going to get the hard yards? BYU does not have that guy.
I don't think he's on the roster.
BYU does not have that guy this year, a guy that's going to lower the shoulder pads and drive for 1.5 yards or 2 yards on 4th and 1 and 3rd and 1 when you need it. That was Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier was special.
Well, he was everything.
Physicality,
he was the long yards,
explosive runs. But when you needed 2 hard yards and everybody knew it was going to Tyler Algier, he'd figure out a way to get 2.5 yards or 3 yards.
Or 50.
Okay? Who is that guy? BYU needs a running back and a quarterback and everything else after that, right? It's quarterback, running back, and then you can fill in the gaps.
I feel good about tight ends, O-line. Obviously, D-line, you always got to get better at that position. Linebackers, you probably return. You may return all those guys.
Ben Bywater, Max Tooley. Is Keenan Peely going to come back? We hope he comes back.
He's a junior now.
Cam Miller said that he thinks he's the best player on BYU's team next year coming back in terms of draft stock, which is pretty wild.
I don't feel the same, but I hope that he's right. You know what I mean? I hope that Keenan is in that position. Right now, Keenan, as of this moment, Keenan's not an NFL linebacker. He can certainly have a breakout year and become that guy next year, but he's got to play better next year. There's some talent coming back, but yes, there's some serious spots. I would almost argue, Spence, not more than quarterback, but the next spot, it's you've got to figure out what the coaching situation is. I'm not talking head coach. I'm talking assistants. Certainly there might be a shakeup in the offseason given what happened this year. I don't know that there will be, but I would anticipate that there very well could be, especially on the defensive side of the ball, the way BYU didn't play, especially during that streak. Typically, when you have a season and a streak like that, there is some kind of change there. I'm not calling a shot or anything on what I think that is, but certainly I wouldn't be surprised if there was something there. Hopefully BYU plays really strong, gets to 8 wins, and maybe they captured something, and maybe that's not necessary. I don't know. Perhaps it is already, no matter what happens, but we'll see.
BYU getting to a bowl game was something that we all felt, okay, you have to do this.
For sure.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
They will accomplish that after they beat Utah Tech a week from tomorrow.
Live on BYU TV.
Then after that, we'll see. You go and beat a Stanford team that is kind of tanking, it feels like, at this point.
They've been taking for a couple of years. 3-6 right now.
Stanford beat Notre Dame this season.
Yeah.
So
it's not even hard to beat Notre Dame?
Stanford team is going to show up against BYU. But let's say BYU goes on the road, gets a Power 5 win, albeit against a bad Stanford team. They're 7-5. You go to a bowl game and you win it, and you're 8-5. Does that help at all try and lure somebody out of the transfer portal now that BYU, they started playing better ball?
Doesn't matter.
They've got back-to-back quarterbacks that have gone to the NFL draft. Maybe I want to get involved there. Okay. Zach Wilson and Jarom Hall back-to-back?
The results don't matter.
Okay.
Because Zach Wilson joined BYU when they were 4-9.
He took a major chance and joined BYU after the 4-9 season.
Well, yes and no.
Those are his words.
Right. Yes and no. BYU has a history of success at this position. Yes, were coming off a bad season, but that can quickly change. These don't last at BYU. And then, poof, you get 21 wins the next 2 years with different quarterbacks. So I'm not convinced that that's not necessarily the case. If anything, it's there's a real opportunity there. BYU's going to a Power 5 league. So I would hope that there's a P5 transfer that BYU can bring in that can have an immediate impact. So now we sit here, Spence, it's like post-94, and you go, okay, who's it going to be? And Sark shows up. And in 95, they don't have a great year. But
7-4.
They don't go to a bowl game. They don't win or did they tie for first but not go to a bowl game or something? It was something weird, right? 7-4-1 or something. And then 96 happens, right? I'm not saying BYU is going to do 96. I'm just saying success. And then there was a situation where a Max Hall transfers from Arizona State, and he's the scout squad guy in 06. And then boom, 07, 08, 09. You can have guys that come in and have an impact. It's not a thing that happens often at BYU where a transfer is the quarterback and is the guy for a while. But it's certainly likely to be the case next year.
It's interesting. The whole transfer thing. Well, think about it. Max Hall was a transfer. Riley Nelson was a transfer. Taysom Hill was a transfer.
Yeah. And Taysom and Max are interesting because they never actually even, I think, show up on campus, if I understand. Maybe Max did, but Taysom never even went to Stanford.
But those guys were in the system,
but
however.
Now
they had a year to learn and grow in the system.
Welcome to 2022.
We think this is a plug-and-play situation.
I mean, it would have been Jackson Dart if he had chosen BYU, but he chose Ole Miss, and that was a great decision for him. They're top 15. They got a big game with, I think, Alabama this week. I don't fault him for not wanting to sit behind Jaron Hall.
Yeah, and I mean, and again,
but it's got to be a Jackson Dart-like guy, hopefully.
Cade Fennegan and Jacob Conover are going to have their shot.
Yes, to compete with those guys for the starting spot.
But regardless, BYU needs more guys in that quarterback room. Maybe 2.
Yeah.
Maybe a JUCO guy and a transfer portal guy to join those guys, so you have 5.
You need depth. Heck, we need depth at the anchor spots on this show, so we can take days off or whatever. You know what I mean? We work together as a group to make this happen in the same way BYU needs to bring in a quality player. Now, that could be a junior college guy. I'd love there to be a P5 guy that steps in and boom, it's just a real success story.
And you would think, going to the Big 12, back-to-back NFL draft quarterbacks, both of those things combined.
That's why I say I don't
be enough.
I don't think it matters what happens with BYU in terms of the luring part. Yeah, I just think BYU is an attractive spot no matter what.
Hey, come to BYU, go to the NFL and play quarterback, and be the Power 5 guy leading him into the Big 12. That's
for a couple years. Go to the NFL.
Right?
Let's go. Okay, topic 2. Do you expect men's hoops to play dramatically different tonight against San Diego State than they did Monday?
Let's define dramatically different. No, dramatically different to me would be they shoot 45% from the three-point line and only turn it over 12 times. And
12 would be amazing.
They shoot 50+% as a team. I mean, it was rough against Idaho State, no doubt about it. I don't expect dramatically different because San Diego State is a really, really good defensive team. That said, I do expect BYU to not turn the ball over 23 times. I feel like BYU is going to have to value possession a little bit more against San Diego State specifically.
So don't run and gun?
Well, run and gun, but not as – Idaho State wanted to run with BYU. San Diego State's not going to want to run with BYU. So at times, maybe to keep this game close and just instead of you're running and gun, if you keep turning the ball over and you continue to go fast, then San Diego State builds a 12 to 14-point lead. You're not coming back from down 12 or 14 against San Diego State because they will slow that thing to a snail's pace.
But what if you build a 12 to 14-point lead because you're running?
That's not going to happen on the road against that team. I just don't think it does. They're too good defensively. I do not see a way BYU is building a 14-point lead against San Diego State because they're outrunning them. I just don't see it happening.
Run and gun, threes in the corner.
I don't see it happening. Now, that again, so don't turn the ball over 23 times because the pace will slow automatically just by who you're playing. It's all on San Diego State. So BYU could sprint as much as they want. San Diego State's still going to play their pace. Really good defense. And then I don't expect BYU to shoot 3 for 16 from the three-point line. I expect it to be a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
Can we hope for, 35% as a team from the three-point line or 33%? Give me 5 out of 16 instead of 3 out of 16.
I'd take it.
Okay?
Yeah.
So better, but not dramatically different. They'll take better care of the ball. They'll shoot a little bit better from the three-point line. And the pace of the game is going to be different than what you saw against Idaho State.
I don't think it's going to be dramatically different. Here's why. That was the San Diego State type of game. Low scoring, low shooting percentage, physical, rebounding, free throws, make a play here or there. Okay? That's how San Diego State likes to play their games, and that's how they like people to play against them. So BYU's thing isn't size. San Diego State's got some real size, led by Mountain West Conference Defensive Player of the Year, Nate Mensah, who is a beast. He's from Ghana, so we got Africans challenging each other in this game. It'll be fun. It'll be Mali versus Ghana at the starting 5. Remember, Foose is undersized at 6'5.5", but a 7'2" wingspan, so it's going to be tough against the 6'10" Nate Mensah. But they've got Darian Trammell put up 18 in their opener against Fullerton. He can shoot it. Butler can shoot it. So it's tough because San Diego State traditionally has been that, let's just chuck it up against the backboard, get an offensive rebound and lay it in. Obviously, they're more skilled than that, but generally speaking, it's like a dump and chase hockey team. BYU likes the power play, if you will, as Mark Pope has said. So we'll see what BYU does. But the real stat that sticks out that we haven't mentioned yet is outside of the restricted area, BYU went 4 of 32. That's bad. So that includes three-pointers, obviously, and twos, and even in the paint outside of the restricted area, 1 for 8. If BYU can just make some of those shots, just at least shoot 45% from 2, including the restricted area, you got a shot in this one. And hopefully BYU can obviously not turn it over. Remember, BYU held its opponent to 56 points and created 22 takeaways. So that level, like, do you have to have that?
Yes, but that's
the bad with the good. Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to create 20 turnovers, but points off turnovers were big time for BYU as well in this game. And so let's see if BYU can't do what they did 2 years ago, which is pull off an upset. BYU has a better shot to win from Ken Palm than they did 2 years ago in this game.
Interesting. 23% chance to win according to Ken Palm.
It was 19 2 years ago.
And it's 19% according to the Basketball Power Index
yeah.
from ESPN.
Dude's got to make plays in this that didn't. Like Rudy Williams, all good, bro. Let's go.
2 for
Jackson
9.
Robinson, Gideon George, all those guys.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Rudy because he's one individual I expect to be a little bit better. He won't shoot 2 for 9. He'll have more than 1 assist and certainly a better assist-to-turnover ratio because he turned it over 4 times as well.
Yep.
So, yeah, Rudy plays better.
Yep.
Maybe BYU as a team plays better.
Yep. Got to do it.
Let's hear